What terrifying creature could be inside the shaking iron barrel, that it required 2 strong men to lift it onto the table? Sheriff Julie cautiously opened the lid of the barrel and asked marine biologist Goodman what kind of creature this was. Goodman was shocked when he saw it and immediately asked where they had found it. Novak, still shaken, explained that they had just pulled it out of the town's lake, at the cost of 2 lives. Then Goodman carefully transferred the creature from the barrel into a fish tank. What appeared before them was a horrifying, monstrous fish, with sharp fangs and a vicious demeanor. It looked particularly menacing. Goodman tentatively dips his finger into the water, only to narrowly avoid losing a few fingers. What was even more horrifying was that this wasn't the only one of its kind. There were at least 10,000 of these creatures in the lake. Upon hearing this, Goodman immediately panicked. He quickly retrieved a fossil from inside the house and placed it next to the fish tank for comparison. To his surprise, the fish's appearance exactly matches the pattern on the fossil. Now, Goodman was sure, this is a prehistoric piranha from 2 million years ago, the ancestor of all piranhas. These creatures always hunted in packs, highly sensitive to the scent of blood. Once a prey animal was injured, a swarm of piranhas would rush to devour it. However, Goodman was puzzled. These should have been extinct long ago. Why were they suddenly reappearing? It turned out that just a few days ago, a minor earthquake had caused the lake's seabed to crack, accidentally releasing the ancient piranhas that had been trapped in an underground lake since a volcanic eruption. A massive whirlpool formed in the center of the lake, and poor fisherman Matt was sucked into it. The hungry piranhas, already desperate for food, immediately devoured Matt in an instant. Afterward, the police received a missing person report and rushed to the lake to investigate. They found Matt's wooden boat. Julie tried to pull the boat closer, but suddenly the wooden bridge collapsed, and Julie fell into the water. As she struggled to swim back to the shore, she was horrified to discover the mutilated body of Matt just seconds later. Julie and Fallon worked together to drag the body back to shore, confused about what kind of creature could have caused such a gruesome death. To get to the bottom of the incident, the next day, Julie and 3 officers took a speedboat to the center of the lake to investigate. They used instruments to scan and found a huge crack caused by the earthquake. Sam and Paula quickly donned diving gear and descended into the water to explore. They soon went deep into the crack and discovered a massive underground cavern. For safety, Paula stayed at the entrance while Sam went further into the cave. As soon as Sam entered, he was stunned by what he saw. Columns with glowing fish eggs attached to them were scattered throughout. Confused, Sam reached out to touch them, but suddenly, the light was so dim that Sam couldn't make out what the object was. In panic, he lit a flare, only to be met with a horrifying sight. It wasn't until Paula noticed that Sam's safety rope had suddenly snapped that she realized something was wrong. She quickly dove into the cave to check, only to find Sam being attacked by a swarm of the monster fish. The surrounding lake water turned crimson with blood. Panicked, Paula turned and tried to swim back, but a large group of piranhas followed her, attacking her legs with ferocity. Realizing that Sam and Paula were in danger, Novak jumped into the water to help, but it was too late. By the time Paula was pulled back onto the boat, her lower body was nothing but bones, and a live piranha was brought back into the cabin with her. To uncover the species and origin of the monstrous fish, Julie took the piranhas paid for with 2 lives to the biologist Goodman. It was then that she learned just how terrifying these creatures were. Goodman believes that the reason the piranhas have survived to this day is likely because, in times of extreme food scarcity, they ate their own kind. Although the dark environment has severely degraded their vision, their hearing and sense of smell have been massively enhanced, and their nature has become even more bloodthirsty and savage. It was hard to imagine how catastrophic it would be if such a large number of piranhas appeared in a modern-day lake. Upon hearing this, Julie immediately realized the gravity of the situation because the town was holding its annual water festival that very day. She quickly led her team to the scene and found the area packed with countless tourists. The officers quickly began evacuating the visitors, shouting for everyone to stop the party and stay away from the water. However, the noise was so overwhelming that no one could hear their warnings. In desperation, Fallon had no choice but to fire a warning shot. What they didn't expect was that their well-meaning warnings only had the opposite effect, causing the tourists to become even more frantic. People ignored the advice and jumped into the water, even cranking the music up to the maximum, continuing their reckless party. Julie, holding a megaphone, tried to convince them to stop, but the commotion had already attracted the piranhas, and this unfortunate woman was the first to be attacked. Soon, more piranhas swarmed in and began a brutal assault on the people in the water. It was only then that the crowd realized something was wrong and frantically tried to swim back to shore. The party scene descended into chaos. In an instant, the lake water turned red with blood, and the air was filled with agonizing screams. Those who swam fast enough were able to save themselves, but the slower swimmers became the piranha's prey. Once a piranha locked onto a target, it only took a few seconds for the victim to be reduced to bones. Faced with this situation, the officers were helpless. They could only attempt to rescue as many people as they could, but then the stage collapsed. Unable to bear the strain, falling directly into the water. In a panic, Novak quickly jumped onto a jet ski with a shotgun and began shooting the piranhas, managing to rescue several tourists. Fallon, showing incredible bravery, removed the propeller from the speedboat and used it as a makeshift chainsaw in the water, killing numerous piranhas. But with the constant influx of piranhas, even Fallon couldn't hold his ground and was quickly overwhelmed. When everything finally settled down, the party scene was a horrific sight. Tourists were dead, others were injured, and limbs and severed body parts were scattered everywhere. Julie was treating the wounded when she suddenly received a call from her son Jake, telling her they had also been attacked by piranhas. Hearing that her 3 children were in danger, Julie was instantly filled with panic. She quickly left with Novak to rescue them. It turns out that just moments ago, Jake was out on the lake with his younger brother and sister, enjoying a ride on a yacht with a friend, when they accidentally crashed into some underwater rocks. Crystal and Derek fell into the water due to the force of the impact. A swarm of piranhas immediately surrounded them, and in an instant, they devoured Crystal. One of the piranhas even emerged from her mouth. Terrified, Derek desperately swam toward the yacht. Danny, who was on the boat, grabbed in order to help, but Derek was attacked by the piranhas. Though Danny managed to pull Derek back on board, his lower body was mangled, and he bled out shortly after. What's worse is that Kelly is also trapped in the kitchen. As the water level continued to rise, large numbers of piranhas swam into the kitchen. Kelly could only stand on a higher platform, shouting for help to Jake outside, but one of the piranhas leaped out of the water, trying to attack her. Jake tried to open the skylight to rescue Kelly, but he quickly realized it was impossible to open. With no other options, he called his mother for help. Upon receiving the call, Julie immediately rushed over with Novak. Worried about hitting rocks, Julie parked the boat not far away and tossed over a rope. Once Jake tied the other end, Julie climbed up the yacht using the rope. When Julie learned that there was still someone trapped in the cabin, she began thinking of a way to help, but the skylight was stuck, and the only passage had been completely submerged in water, and the water was filled with aggressive piranhas. With no other choice, Julie decided to first get Danny and the 2 kids to the safe boat, then figure out a way to rescue Kelly. The water was teeming with piranhas, and any mistake would result in certain death. But they made a fatal mistake choosing to have all 4 of them climb across at the same time. Sure enough, as they climbed halfway up the rope, it was already hanging so close to the water's surface. As Danny's long hair sank into the water, she was immediately attacked by the piranhas. Panicked, Danny struggled desperately, but the piranhas jumped out of the water and tore at her back. Soon, Danny lost her strength and fell into the water, where she was torn apart by the piranhas. Seeing this horror unfold, the remaining survivors rushed to climb faster. The 2 children made it safely to the boat. Just then, the handrail suddenly broke loose. Luckily, Novak reacted quickly and managed to avert disaster. Julie also managed to get back onto the boat safely. However, Kelly's situation was dire. The water had already reached her feet. The piranhas began to stir, and Kelly could only use a frying pan to defend herself. Seeing his future girlfriend in mortal danger, Jake ignored his mother's warning and didn't climb over to join her. Instead, he untied the rope and tied it around himself. Jake came up with a plan to save Kelly. He would use Derek's body to distract the piranhas. As soon as Jake tossed Derek's body into the water, the piranhas in the cabin immediately rushed toward it. Taking advantage of the moment when the piranhas were feeding, Jake quietly entered the water from the side and quickly submerged under the boat to reach the cabin. Once he met up with Kelly, Jake hurriedly contacted his mother through the walkie-talkie and told them to prepare the boat to pull him and Kelly out. After speaking, Jake found a flare stick, then dove into the water again to open 2 propane tanks. He planned to blow up the piranhas after they had left. With everything set, Jake radioed his mother to warn them to accelerate after 10 seconds. He and Kelly then submerged into the water. However, they didn't know that an accident had occurred outside. At that very moment, the speedboat refused to start. Unaware of what was happening, Jake lit the flare stick and threw it into the cabin. Worse still, the piranhas had finished eating Derek's body and had turned back. Seeing this, Jake could only hold Kelly and wait for the worst. Just when it seemed like there was no hope, the speedboat finally started. Novak slammed the throttle, and the boat sped away. the huge explosion killed a large number of piranhas. Jake and Kelly were successfully rescued, but as they celebrated their narrow escape, Julie received a call from Goodman. In other words, the piranhas that attacked them, those capable of devouring an adult in an instant, were actually just a group of immature juveniles. At this point, Novak looked at Julie, completely puzzled, and asked,
"Babies? Where are the parents?"
Two girls were chatting by the lake when suddenly, out of nowhere, a piranha appeared in the water. Realizing the danger, Maddie and Shelby quickly got up to leave, but the fierce piranhas started slamming into the wooden planks, causing Shelby, who was walking behind, to lose her balance and fall into the lake. The commotion immediately attracted a swarm of piranhas. In a critical moment, Maddie acted swiftly and rescued Shelby, who safely returned to the wooden plank. However, after they had walked a few steps, Shelby accidentally broke the plank beneath her, trapping her foot in the wooden bridge. Just a step away from reaching the shore, the piranhas launched another brutal attack. It's all over now. They've both fallen into the water. A large swarm of piranhas immediately charged toward them. Fortunately, having grown up by the lake, they were both good swimmers. Just before the piranhas could attack, they managed to swim to the shore in the nick of time. But before they could catch their breath, a terrifying thing happened. A piranha leapt out of the water and lunged toward them. Maddie reacted swiftly and grabbed the piranha. She then slammed it onto the ground and began furiously smashing it with a rock. After a relentless assault, the piranha finally stopped moving. In an effort to understand the origins of these piranhas, Maddie, accompanied by her police boyfriend Kyle and colleague Barry, visited the famous local marine biologist Goodman. It turned out that Goodman had been researching these piranhas for a year, and he just so happened to have one in his tank. The ferocity of the piranha was beyond imagination. Goodman then showed them something extraordinary. He placed a thick steel plate in the fish tank to divide it, and on the other side, he put a frog. Everyone thought it was impossible no matter how fierce the piranha. It couldn't break through a steel plate just a few millimeters thick. However, what happened next left everyone in shock. Upon detecting the presence of food, the piranha immediately became agitated and began ramming the steel plate. Within just a few seconds, it created a large hole in the steel. Seeing the piranhas about to break through the steel plate and devour the frog, the kind-hearted Barry, disregarding the danger, immediately rescued it from the fish tank. He had kept frogs as pets before and couldn't bear to witness such a brutal scene. Goodman then explained that these piranhas weren't modern creatures, but rather ancient piranhas that should have been extinct long ago. As for why they had reappeared after millions of years, Goodman was just as puzzled. He explained that since piranhas have almost no natural predators and reproduce rapidly, the entire lake could eventually be overrun by them. There's even a possibility that the piranhas could enter private swimming pools through drainage pipes, posing a serious threat to humans. Hearing this, Maddie immediately realized the gravity of the situation. Her family's newly opened water park was directly connected to the lake, and it was scheduled to open the very next day. If what Goodman said was true, there would be major trouble ahead. Goodman also mentioned that he had warned people about the dangers of these piranhas before, but because he lacked credibility, no one believed him. Realizing the severity of the problem, Maddie hurried to the lakeside to check if the drainage system's filter had been compromised. After donning her diving mask and taking a flashlight, Maddie submerged into the water. After inspecting the area, she found that the filter was intact. However, just as she was about to return, a piranha suddenly appeared. The smell of blood immediately attracted a swarm of piranhas. On the shore, Kyle realized the situation was dire and quickly jumped into the water to rescue her. He successfully got Maddie back onto the shore just before the piranha swarm could reach them. Back home, Maddie was still shaken from the events. She intended to lie in the bathtub and relax to calm her nerves, but little did she know, a large group of piranhas had already made their way down the pipes and into the bathtub. Luckily, it turned out to be just a nightmare. However, the dream served as a grim reminder for Maddie she had to stop the water park from opening, or the consequences could be catastrophic. But when she woke up the next morning, she was shocked to see a large crowd of visitors already gathered at the water park. Maddie immediately sought out her father to explain the danger of the piranhas. Chet, however, was dismissive. He had invested too much time, money, and resources into making sure the water park opened on schedule. Who would take responsibility for the massive losses if they stopped now? After saying that, Chet ignored Maddie's warnings and turned on the water pump. Unbeknownst to him, the piranhas were already flowing into the water through the intake pipes. One even broke through the filter and swam into the swimming pool. A young boy came out of the pool, telling his mother that his calf had been bitten by a fish. The mother, however, didn't believe him, brushing it off as a scratch. How could there be fish in the pool? She insisted, sending the boy away. Meanwhile, the piranhas, having tasted blood, began leaving the pool through the intake pipe, preparing to call their comrades for a feast. Sure enough, not long after, strange movements were detected in the pool. One of the visitors noticed something wrong and alerted Maddie. Maddie rushed to her father once again, telling him that piranhas had entered the pool and urging him to evacuate the guests. To her shock, Kyle arrived and tried to stop her, telling her not to stir panic. Facing her boyfriend's distrust, Maddie is utterly disappointed, with no one willing to help her. She shouted to warn the guests, hoping to get their attention and alert them to the danger beneath the surface. However, Kyle quickly dragged her away from the scene. At this moment, the tourists were still leisurely sunbathing, unaware that danger was about to strike. It wasn't until one woman was bitten by a piranha, her blood spilling into the water, that the others began to realize something was wrong. But by then, it was already too late. A frenzy of piranhas rushed into the pool, and chaos ensued. The entire pool was soon filled with blood, and even those on the water slides weren't spared. As everyone scrambled to escape, Fallon, who was sitting in a wheelchair, remained calm. He asked his assistant to help him fit his titanium legs, and with a determined limp, he walked toward the pool, ready to face the piranhas head-on. The piranhas that charged at Fallon couldn't even bite through his titanium alloy legs. Moreover, his titanium legs had been specially modified. However, the number of piranhas was simply too overwhelming, and Fallon alone couldn't possibly kill them all. At this point, Chet looked at the tragedy in the swimming pool and froze in place. Maddie, with Barry by her side, was still trying to figure out a way to stop the disaster, to minimize further casualties. She realized they had to drain the pool. Maddie sent Barry to open the water valves while she dived into the pool to rescue the trapped tourists. On the way to the pump room, Barry met his friend Big Dave, and the two of them headed there together. Barry quickly opened the water valves, and the pool began draining. The strong suction sucked the piranhas into the drainage pipes. Unfortunately, Maddie was caught in the suction before she could escape. At that moment, Kyle was on the shore, and Maddie thought she was saved. But to her horror, Kyle didn't offer a helping hand. It turned out that Maddie's father had promised Kyle a share of the park's profits before the opening, so Kyle had turned a blind eye to the potential dangers. He had never expected such a disaster. Kyle left without a second thought, leaving Maddie helpless and slowly being pulled toward the pool's bottom. Things got worse when a piranha broke through the wall and swam toward her. In the nick of time, Barry arrived and threw a harpoon, hitting the piranha squarely. Maddie was on the verge of unconsciousness from lack of air, but Barry dove in and pulled her out of the water. He immediately performed CPR, successfully reviving her just in time. Meanwhile, in the water pump room, Big Dave came up with a plan. He poured gasoline into the pipes and then, grinning, tossed a lit cigarette into the mix. A massive explosion followed, and fish rained down from the sky. Just when everyone thought the disaster was over, Maddie received a call from Goodman. He had barely spoken when Maddie saw a piranha slowly crawl out of the water and onto the shore. At that moment, a little boy, still holding his phone, approached the piranha to take a picture, ignoring his mother's protests. The next second, it seemed that the piranha, now capable of walking, was about to trigger an even more terrifying disaster.